Welcome to Obi-Wan Studios, and today I am super excited to be reviewing the 75313 Ultimate Collector Series AT-AT. This set is due to retire at the end of 2024, and I've never owned it, so I picked it up and I figured, why not answer the questions, is it worth getting before it retires if you've been debating picking it up, and is this set truly as good as everyone has said it has been since it released? Now, the UCS AT-AT released in November of 2021 for $850, and as I already mentioned, it's going to be retiring at the end of 2024, so you don't actually have that much time to pick this set up for that retail price before it's going to be completely gone. This set comes with 6,785 pieces and 9 total minifigures, 2 of which are exclusive to the UCS AT-AT. We have 4 snowtroopers, 1 snowtrooper commander, which is one of the exclusive minifigs, 2 AT-AT drivers, General Veers, the other exclusive minifig, and Luke Skywalker, rounding out our minifig selection. Now, the box art for our AT-AT is that standard Ultimate Collector Series and 18+ aesthetic, all in black with the build just on the front with no other artwork. We have a little bit of a blue glow in behind the build, but man, is the AT-AT ever intimidating looking. Seeing just this box with the large build on the front of it, your eyes can't help but be drawn to it when it's on the shelf in the Lego store. So it's a really cool looking box art nonetheless, even though there's not that much going on. When it comes to the box art though, however, what I really think is cool is how on the top with all of the minifigs listed, the head of the AT-AT also comes across diagonally and you can look down upon it. I just think that's a cool addition and overall just is a nice extra touch to the detail on the top of the box. When it comes to the sides of the box, we have the head on view on the right side and then from behind the build on the left side. But the back of the box is probably my favorite part, where it shows the AT-AT build displayed in its cross-section form where the sides of the cockpit and troop transport section are all taken off and you have the build displayed with the interior completely visible with all of the minifigs inside of it. It looks so cool, and this build too is basically minifig scale, which is even better. I really love that about this build too. And speaking of things that look cool, Luke Skywalker hanging from below the build with his lightsaber out attached with the cable. Just such a awesome callback to The Empire Strikes Back. As for other details on the back of our box, we have the set's dimensions shown, as well as some more features of the build, and then some shots from the movie as well. All right, I'm going to take you guys through the complete unboxing of the UCS AT-AT, all of the fun additions that come with an Ultimate Collector Series set and everything. And as I mentioned, I've never owned this set, so I'm going to be experiencing it for the first time with you guys, which is going to be pretty fun. There is tape even on the bottom of the set. I don't think I've ever seen that before, actually, where it's got tape where you're gonna have to lift it up and actually try and open it up. Okay, there we go. Alrighty. So on the first flap, you guys can see here, there's a little crest with the Empire on it. The AT-AT, some snowtroopers as well. Looks pretty cool. And then the second flap kind of shows the scan when the rebels are actually looking to see what's approaching them from the base. And then they first spot the AT-ATs. I really like the addition of this in there. I think that looks so cool. And then it looks like we have a few boxes with the shots of the AT-AT from the movie, kind of all to create the one large image from all 4 boxes. And that's pretty sweet as well. I absolutely love unboxing experiences like this where you just get these little extra touches to the set and all these other little details that make it feel more special. And really, for $850, it should feel special when you unbox it and get into experiencing the set. It should have details like this. Okay, so these are all going to be numbered, obviously. This one, as you guys can see here, it's got kind of 4 lights, and this one is lit up number 1. So this one's going to be kind of the, I guess the base of the legs, kind of the section, the top section underneath the entire thing. And then just assuming boxes 1 through 4 all are obviously going to be the different sections. So this will be 2, 3, and then 4 to open everything up. So that's pretty nice. Let's get everything out, opened up on my table, and I'll check back in with you guys once I've done that. All right, with everything taken out of the main set box, I have the 4 boxes, as you guys can see here, and they all complete that picture of the AT-ATs when they're stacked together, which always looks so cool to see little details like that in UCS sets. Every box, as I mentioned, will be numbered 1 through 4. In this case, it's done in these white lights, these vertical white lights. That'll make kind of a progress bar as you go through everything. And each box as well will have what part of the build that you actually complete within the box highlighted within the shot of the entire set, which is very helpful, obviously, to kind of give you that indication of what you're actually building. What I'm going to do is open up the very first box and kind of go through the progression of the build with you guys. I'll build everything in box 1 after showing you its contents and check back in, unbox everything in box 2, build everything in there, and then check back in and so forth until the entire set is completed and we go over the full build and the rest of the review. By the way, one other detail I should show you guys is how on the underside of these boxes, you actually have imprints in the snow of the Lego feet of the AT-AT. Just another really great touch that these boxes have, which, you know, it's all about the details in UCS sets. All right, so inside of the box, we have this cardboard protective sleeve. Always great to have that in sets, so everything just stays in the condition you should expect it to be in for an $850 set. Well, didn't open that up. All right, with everything taken out of the first box, here's what we've got. We have 3 number 1 bags, 2 number 2 bags, 3 number 3 bags, 2 number 4 bags, and then 1 bag with a few wheel pieces inside of it that is unnumbered, making for 11 bags in total. We also have our instructions manual that came in that cardboard protective sleeve, and it has the same light system on it as well, indicating that we are going to obviously be getting 1 instructions manual with each box, which is pretty nice to get that. It has the same artwork on the front of it as well that we see on the top of the actual boxes for each part of the build, indicating what part of the set you'll be building. Now, as this is a review and I'll give you guys all my thoughts and opinions on the entire experience of the set, this isn't my favorite artwork we've gotten on instructions manuals. It just, I don't know, there's something about it that I just was a bit disappointed in when I actually took it out of the sleeve. I get why it's like this with what part of the build you are actually building, but we get it. We know what we're doing. We've seen it on the top of the boxes. This could have been a page inside of the instructions manual instead, but you know, whatever, that's what we've got. It's not making or breaking the set, but it's just, hey, my opinion when I've experienced it, and I'm always going to tell you guys my thoughts. We have the same crest that we saw when we were opening up the actual portion of the set to the main actual box, which looks good on the back, but again, just, I don't know, not my favorite looking instructions manual, but hey, doesn't affect the set in any real way. All right, I've completed box 1. We have the undercarriage of the AT-AT as well as the base for the legs completed out of that one. And you also get the little screwdriver to adjust the legs too out of that box. Now let's open up box 2 and see the contents of that one. All right, with everything from box 2 organized, here is what we have. In total, we have 13 bags, but only 3 actual numbers for the bags. We have 4 number 5 bags, 4 number 6 bags, and then 5 number 7 bags. So only 3 kind of components to the build in terms of numbers, but a lot of bags to go through. Then we also have the same instructions manual kind of style as well for box 2, just for all 4 of the legs this time around. All right, I have box 2 completed and it's really starting to look like an AT-AT as you guys can see. Now let's open up box 3 and get to building kind of the main interior of our build. All right, taking a look at the contents for box number 3, we again have our instructions manual as we've come to expect it. One bag that is unnumbered with some larger wheel pieces and other Technic connection joints as well. We have 2 number 8 bags, 2 number 9 bags, 2 number 10 bags, 2 number 11 bags, 2 number 12 bags, and 2 number 13 bags. So for 13 bags in total out of box 3, I'm going to go now and build everything for kind of the interior section of the AT-AT, and then I will check back in with you guys one final time to open up box 4, and then we'll get into the final fully built AT-AT and the remainder of the review. Box 3 also contains the sticker sheet. Mine was just stuck inside of the cardboard sleeve, so I thought maybe it was going to come in box 4, but then when I was building this set and flipped to one of the pages where then you had to place a sticker for some of the Imperial lighting details on the inside, I quickly realized that I should have gotten a sticker, so I was able to go back and luckily find that. So just a little bit of an additional detail for what you get in box 3. Alright, I finished all of box 3. The entire interior is done now except for the cockpit or head of the AT-AT, obviously. And I'd be lying if I said that some time hasn't passed since I opened box 3. This is such a big build and it's taken me a lot longer, especially with just life and everything else going on, to actually get to building it. But finally, I am able now to open up box 4 and finish the AT-AT and then be able to continue on with the review. So let's go ahead and open up box 4 and finish building the AT-AT. All right, so out of box 4, we have our instructions manual. Just like all of the other ones, this one actually highlights the exterior paneling and the cockpit, which we will be building. There was also the little display plaque piece, and that caught me off guard for a moment because all of the new UCS sets at the time of me making this review at the end of 2024, they all come printed, but this one, of course, is still a sticker, so just took me by a little bit of a surprise for getting almost that, okay, yeah, this is kind of the old school way of Lego doing things. Now we have bags numbered 14 to 18 and we have 15 in total, and each number has 3. So we have 3 14 bags, 3 number 15, 3 number 16, 3 number 17, and 3 number 18. So I'm gonna go and finish up the AT-AT now. Hopefully won't take me too much longer, and then I will check back in with you guys once it is fully built and we can actually get into the real kind of review part of the review. And with all 4 instructions manuals, at the beginning of each one, you have a couple of pages that are dedicated to the build, the design of it, the actual AT-AT within the Star Wars universe. You see a cross-section of one. Some new building techniques are highlighted as well. My favorite part, though, about kind of the Ultimate Collector Series treatment to the instructions manuals is the timeline of all the different AT-AT sets in book 4. I just think that's so cool to actually see it laid out on a paper format, that whole timeline. It looks really cool. The little details like this, I always love that bit of extra mile that the designers go for with these Ultimate Collector Series sets in the instructions manuals. It just makes for a really cool experience, and it makes it special, which Ultimate Collector Series building experiences should be special. All right, everything has been built, and at the time of me making the main portion of the review now, the UCS AT-AT has basically sold out everywhere. It's pretty much fully retired now. So this review is a final look at the UCS AT-AT, at least that's how I'm treating it, and really a tribute video to one of the greatest LEGO Star Wars sets of all time. So let's dive into the remainder of the review, starting off with our minifigs first. Up first for the minifigs, we have 4 Snow Troopers. Their design is just really great. The modern Snow Troopers that we get, I really do like a lot. The helmets look fantastic with that little bit of printing on them. Underneath the helmets, we have different face prints as well, but you're just never going to see them. They'll always be wearing the helmets pretty much. The printing on the front and back looks really nice too. Overall, just some great Snow Troopers. Up next is our first exclusive minifig to the set, the Snowtrooper Commander, and visually he is identical to a regular Snowtrooper except for the Imperial ranking that's on his chest, and it's pretty much covered up by the helmet as well, so I'll take the helmet off, you guys can get a better look at the rank printing and the Snowtrooper Commander face print that you get as well, but otherwise he is just pretty much identical to those regular Snowtroopers. Moving on to our two AT-AT drivers, and these guys look so great. I absolutely love the helmets and the printing on them. It just makes me really excited to get that rumored AT-AT driver helmet set that should be releasing sometime in the middle of 2025. The color scheme between the light gray and the sand blue as well looks really, really nice. The printing on the front and back too looks fantastic. The AT-AT drivers are just two really solid minifigs. And then we have our second exclusive minifig, General Veers. He is another really fantastic looking minifig. The helmet with the printing on it looks really good. And then we also have two different face prints for General Veers, both of which look really nice. I love the fact that they added in the little microphone as well into the face print. That is a nice detail that he has. The printing on his front and back looks great as you would expect. And the dual molded legs for the boots just really brings his minifig's design home. He looks so sharp, and the fact that LEGO actually gave us him with dual molded legs is such a nice bonus. And lastly, we have our pilot Luke Skywalker. He isn't the best version of pilot Luke that we've ever gotten. That's in the Ultimate Collector Series X-Wing set, but he's still fairly solid. The printing on the helmet looks great, and we have two different face prints too, both of which look nice. However, my issue with this minifig is that the second face print sticks out on the back underneath the helmet. You can see a bit of his mouth and the chin strap too, so that just looks a little dumb in my opinion. The rest of pilot Luke looks pretty solid though. We have nice printing on the front and back. So he's a good minifig. I just really don't like how you can see that second face print from behind him, but otherwise a nice pilot Luke. Of course, all of our minifigs come with accessories. We have blaster rifles for the Snowtroopers, some blaster pistols for the AT-AT drivers and General Veers, along with a pair of binoculars, and then our pilot Luke comes with his blue lightsaber, a thermal detonator, and a grappling hook, which I'll show you guys how it attaches to the AT-AT a little later on in the review. But 9 minifigs in total, I think, is fairly solid. You could always make the argument that there should have been a couple more Snowtroopers, for example, added in, but 9 in total, I think, is solid, and they all are pretty fantastic minifigs too. Now, our set also comes with 3 smaller complementary builds. We have 2 snow speeders, and they are the exact same design that we would see in the Snowtrooper Battle Pack 2, so I just appreciate LEGO being consistent in the design for the Snowtrooper's speeder bike. It looks pretty nice overall with the color scheme. The printed control panel is a nice touch, and I really do appreciate the little T-bar piece as well for the Snowtrooper's legs to fit in. That way they're firmly attached to the snow speeder, but then they're not stuck based on studs on the bottom with the legs as well. So it's just a really nice design that works pretty well. I'm just a fan of these snow speeders. I think they look pretty nice. There also is this little laser cannon build. It's maybe a bit oversized, but it looks fairly cool, I think, and just another nice little build that's included in the set. And of course, with every UCS set, we have our UCS display plaque. This set, at the time when it was first released, LEGO hadn't transitioned into printing these, so this one was a sticker, and it's never the best when you have to place a sticker for a larger UCS plaque like this one. I think I did a fairly good job getting it on there nice and centered and straight, but you can still see some imperfections just due to the fact that it's a sticker. You can see some almost stretch marks in the sticker and then some little bubbles as well in behind on mine. It's never going to look as good next to one of the more modern printed ones, and because the UCS AT-AT was on shelves during that transition period, I just wish LEGO would have started printing these for this set, and then this one that I would have bought would have come with a printed display plaque instead of the original sticker, but of course LEGO just wouldn't do that, unfortunately, so getting a sticker for this set for that display plaque isn't the best, but overall it looks pretty solid, and you guys can pause the video if you want to actually read all the features of the UCS AT-AT. But probably the best and most clever part for this display plaque is on the back side. You have a little holder for the brick-built screwdriver that you use to adjust the legs. That way it's just never going to get lost on you, and it's always going to be right by the UCS AT-AT if you ever want to change how it's posed. So that's just a nice touch, and it's nice and hidden in behind there too. And now we can take a look at the AT-AT build itself. And when it comes to UCS builds especially, there are four main categories that I look for out of them. The first being the design in terms of how good of a display piece is it. The second is how accurate the build is to the source material, you know, the movie or the TV show. The third are the features of the build. And the fourth is the build quality of it in terms of the actual structural design of that build. Now, the UCS AT-AT, I think, is absolutely incredible in 3 out of 4 of those categories. And this might be a little controversial in this review, but this is coming from my personal experience with the build. I don't think the build quality is actually that great. And as we get on into the review and talking about the build and the features and different parts of it, I'll get into that in more detail. But I think the build is just incredibly good looking from a design standpoint. It certainly has that wow factor. People who aren't necessarily into Lego can still appreciate this build because it's so large, it's so massive. I've shown people who don't really care about Lego this set, and they've just thought it's the coolest thing ever because they know the Empire Strikes Back and the AT-AT is such an iconic vehicle. So it certainly has that wow factor in terms of its display. It's also incredibly accurate. There are so many details that they got right on the AT-AT. It's a very worthy model of what we see in the Empire Strikes Back. The features on it as well, the fact that it has such a great interior and all these other details and things you can kind of do with the build, even though it's a big UCS build, it has almost some play features added into it as well, so that's fantastic. But the build quality, it's just been a bit of a pain if I'm being honest. Moving the build for this review even and over just even the whole build process of it is a nightmare. I don't find it that easy. It's probably the worst set to actually pick up and move that I own. There are pieces that constantly fall off or need to be readjusted and messed with. It's just, it's been a little bit of a pain from that standpoint. Once I put this build in behind me on display and I just look at it, I'm going to absolutely love it. But right now, I'm not completely over the moon with this build. But now let's dive into all of the details and features on the AT-AT, starting off with the feet. And from a design standpoint, I think this is arguably my favorite part of the build. I just think the feet look so good. I remember watching The Empire Strikes Back when I was a kid and seeing Luke Skywalker almost get trampled by the enormous foot pads of the AT-AT. And they're so nicely designed and represented here. The shaping of them was done super well. Even the foot pad yaw struts that go from the actual foot pad to the ankle, those look so great and they're nice and accurate. And then the ankle braces too, and the way the system works where the entire AT-AT isn't fully balanced directly on the feet. They're not connected by bricks. It's all Technic pieces that join in and then connect inside. The way that was done was very, very well done. Even the little 2 service access hatches in terms of the little smooth tiles on the front, just those little details all look so great when it comes to the feet. One thing I will say in terms of the build quality is these inside yaw struts that you have for the foot pads. They come off from the top of the ankle relatively easily. They're just attached by one small little Technic joint, and that isn't the most stable, especially if you pick the set up or if you're adjusting the actual angle of the legs. Those I find I'm kind of constantly having to push back in and have fully attached to the sides of the legs. So it looks great and it obviously functions as you'd want it to, but it's just a little fragile. As for the rest of the legs, all of the plating looks so nice. There's relatively little gaps on the legs too. The largest gaps are on the inside of the legs at the knee and hip joints, and that's that you can actually adjust the angles of the legs, just make it look a little bit more animated instead of it being so static. So now let's take a look at how you actually do that in that entire system. All right, so you take your screwdriver and you just insert it into the slot and connect it to the Technic joint that sits in the opening just above the knee joint, for example. And then if we just want to rotate it, you can rotate it forwards, but I'm going to rotate it back in this case here and just make this one leg at the knee joint at least stand up a bit more straight, as you guys can see it rotating towards us. And then if you wanted to do something similar for the hips, you can do that as well. Just insert it up here, this time underneath the joint. And then if we want to rotate it back a little bit, straighten it out just a tiny bit more, we can do that as well. The system overall works really smoothly. The fact that they gave you a little screwdriver to actually use for the Technic pins, and then you have the two separate joints, I think is pretty clever, and I love being able to actually position the legs of the AT-AT. And just to give you guys a bit of a different angle of adjusting the leg, I'm going to move the leg kind of more back into a bit more of a walking stance. See the knee joint, just rotate forward, and then I'm going to do the same thing with the hip joint. Just kind of have it rotated a little bit more. That way, I just think that kind of looks cool, having one of the legs at least look like it's walking forward there. So while I really do like the system and the ability to actually pose the legs of the AT-AT, one issue with the design I really think comes down to the weight of the AT-AT. I don't think these joints, the way they were designed, they're quite happy holding the weight of the AT-AT. Sometimes when you take the screwdriver and place it into the joints, they just don't feel that happy, and you can almost feel some resistance into posing the AT-AT. And then when you pick it up and try and place it back down, the joints will adjust and move on you if you're not careful. So then it can really go from having it placed in a really nice position to then moving it, and all of a sudden the entire leg kind of hip system will fall and kind of shift forward on you, and then all of a sudden the build isn't quite as stable. Now, I've had no real risk of the build falling over on me, but there definitely have been times where I'm not paying that much attention to the way the legs are posed, especially at the hips, and the next thing I know, everything's kind of swaying forward, and one of the back legs will actually be just lifted up a little bit and not making full contact with a table or the surface, so the weight can get a bit unevenly distributed, and at that point, I think if the set does get bumped, you do have a bit of a risk of it wanting to fall over. Again, this is just my personal experience with the build. Once you have it posed the way you want and then just kind of in a permanent resting spot, it's absolutely fantastic and it works fine. But right now, as I'm trying to pose it and get these different angles and shots for you guys during the review, it's not the funnest time I'm having, if I'm being honest. Just on the inside of the hips, you have these kind of guardrail pieces almost. I'm not sure exactly what they are. If you look at a shot of the AT-AT from The Empire Strikes Back, you can see these are right tight up against the legs and kind of rotate with the legs. On the build, they're spaced out a bit more just so that the hip joints can move freely, but because they're attached just by one single stud, these pieces fall off on you all the time. It's just something I've come to expect. If I really touch the build in any sort of way around that point, they're just gonna fall off. So because of the fact that they're not right up against the hips like they should be for accuracy's sake, and just how weak of a connection point they are, this is one part that I think the AT-AT would have looked just fine without. In this section as well, we have the heavy-duty bracers, which are actually attached to the main side panels of the build. These are so that the AT-AT can attach to whatever barge or ship is, I believe, deploying it on the planet or bringing it back up to the Star Destroyer. So a nice accurate detail. There's the correct number of them there, and it looks really nice angled inwards towards the build. Surprisingly, underneath the AT-AT, you have a ton of detail as well. I think this section is a bit of the drivetrain for the legs that the AT-AT can actually walk. I couldn't find anything in terms of details or information on this actual section in a cross section or anything anywhere, but it looks really, really nice from that design standpoint. And you can attach Luke Skywalker's grapple hook to this underside of the AT-AT as well, so you can have it on display with him dangling underneath there, and then the hatch as well that he opens up with his lightsaber to throw the thermal detonator is there too, so you can have that open if you wanted to. It's just really cool that those little details are added into this underside of the AT-AT. However, from a build quality standpoint, this spot is probably my least favorite part of the AT-AT. It's an area that I feel like kind of is very high risk of falling apart on you, and if any of the little pieces fall off, you pretty much have to take the entire underside of it off in order to reattach it, because it's just too tight to get your fingers in there, and sometimes the way certain pieces will fall off, there's just no other way but to take the entire section off so that you can reattach it all properly. So from a build quality standpoint, the underside section I don't think was done that well, if I'm being honest. It's just an area I've had a lot of trouble with. Taking a look now at the main carrier section of the AT-AT, all of the side plating looks really nice. There's relatively little gaps too between the side and top plates of the carrier section. The shaping was done really nicely too overall. Even just like the little details like these black grates here make up for the atmospheric ventilation system, the little ladder that exists on either side too. It just looks really good in the shaping, how it's kind of angled at the front and back sections. It just was done very well, and I think you can accept that there are going to be some gaps in there, and they're definitely acceptable enough for the way it was designed. I think it looks really, really good. On either side, you have this access hatch, which can open up for the troop staging area. You can just grab this little clip piece and it'll pull out, and then you lift it up. And then in order to get it to actually hold, you have to kind of, I found, push it back in just a little bit and fiddle with it a tiny bit until... Okay, it took me a moment to get the hatch to actually want to stay open. It's a bit of a heavy piece, so just naturally, it tends to want to close back down slowly on you. But with it open, you have access to the troop staging area, and you can place a couple of snowtroopers inside there if you wanted. And even for just display, if you wanted to keep this piece open just to show a little bit of the interior, you could always do that too, and it looks pretty nice, I have to say. Now, one of the cooler features about this set is how you can display it in a little bit of a cross-section form. In order to do that, all you need to do is take off one of these side panels, and then the rest will all stay on, giving you a nice look at the interior of the troop carrier area of the AT-AT while you have it on display. So these side panels are only connected by just two kind of little pins that they sit on with these little Technic hole sections. You just lift the entire side panel off, and it pulls away, revealing the interior of the troop carrier section. And then that is just how you can display the AT-AT if you want. I think it looks pretty cool this way, but for me personally, I like having it fully covered, fully armored up. That's the way I'm personally gonna leave mine displayed, but a cool option if you choose to do it that way. Now, to give you guys the best look at the AT-AT's interior, I'm going to take off the top panels also. There are just three pieces, one for the center, one for the back, and one for the front. Now, as you guys can see, the main interior of the AT-AT is fully designed and looks so good. On the first floor at the very back, we have two racks on either side for the snow speeders. So if you had some of those snowtrooper battle packs, you could store two more in there for the accurate four that the AT-AT would hold in total. In the middle of the first floor, we have the troop staging area. It's just nice and open and has a ladder to take the snowtroopers up to the second floor. Then at the very front, we have some seats for them, and then the hatch that would take you to the cockpit of the AT-AT-2. Throughout the first floor, you also have some of these stickers for the Imperial lighting that's in there. It just adds a lot more detail to that interior, and they all look very nice. The plates for the main stickers do fall off kind of easily if you bump them, so you just have to be careful of not doing that. Moving up to the second floor, at the back we have the two fuel cells for the AT-AT. They're nice and accurate looking, and I think they just look pretty cool as well. Then the rest of the second floor is dedicated for 32 seats for snowtroopers in total. When you combine that with the 8 that are on the first floor, you have room for 40 snowtroopers to be sat inside of the AT-AT, which is the accurate number. I mean, that is so cool that you could actually place 40 seated inside the main compartment of the AT-AT. In case you guys were curious, this is what the backside of the side paneling looks like. You can see the two outer panels are on there pretty solid actually. The connections I find the odd time will fall off, but overall they're attached nicely. You can see the Technic system as well, that's for the access hatch to actually open and close back up. The heavy duty bracers, how they attach at the bottom here. Overall, a pretty solid system with little Technic holes where you attach the actual pins to. I'll zoom on those guys for you in some B-roll shots, but that's just what the underside of the side paneling looks like, just in case you wanted to see it. Now, just to show you guys how you would place these side panels back on, you kind of guide the Technic pins for the hatch into the lower section of the cockpit, and then you have to take the two kind of Technic holders and line them up so it'll actually hook on. And it can be a little tricky, but there we go, we have them on. Now, one area that I found to be kind of problematic is the back section where it has the opening. There is this little section that you kind of place through it for the back panel to rest on, and it helps to make it have that shaping in the proper angle. But this little piece here is so fragile as well. One thing you can do is if you open it up here, if you watch, I just put a little, like barely any pressure at all in the upwards motion on it, and it'll fall right off on you. That's another piece that I've just had break off probably 20 times, if not more. So when you have this back plate resting on it, you can't pull up on it or anything, or else that back piece will just fall off, and then you got to take it off and redo the whole thing. But overall, the system is pretty good there, placing the actual hatch back in. But that's how it goes and attaches on there, just the two Technic pins holding everything in place. Like I said, you just got to be careful because the section can be a bit fragile, and you do risk breaking some pieces off if you're taking these side panels off. As far as detail goes in the back of the AT-AT, you can see here how the two side panels and the top come together to create that shaping. And then you have this one large central panel that has just a lot of texture to it, and it looks pretty cool. This one piece comes down a little bit more too, kind of the back of what I kind of call the drive shaft, at least there. Overall, the back of the AT-AT is pretty detailed and it looks nice too. And lastly, we have the cockpit section of our build. The access tube between the main troop transport carrier section of the AT-AT and the cockpit is definitely more functional than intended to look good. It looks pretty good, but there definitely are some larger gaps in between the bigger pieces. But this is necessary because the cockpit of the AT-AT can move side to side, and it can kind of angle a little bit too. So you have some function and posability that comes with the cockpit, and the gaps just allow for that to happen and not being a rigid and kind of strong piece that way in terms of the actual aesthetic of it, but in functionality, it works really well. As for the actual cockpit design for the AT-AT, I found that especially when you kind of move it around, there are some larger gaps between the side pieces that you just can't really help but have. It's kind of a necessary evil by the design in order to get the overall shape in there, but it looks pretty good. You have some more angled pieces as well on the side plates that add some more larger gaps, but I just appreciate the fact that the designers tried to make the shape as accurate as possible. On each side of the cockpit, you have the medium laser cannon. The rangefinder is represented by the top piece, and then you have the actual laser cannon barrel underneath it. And then you have the Class 2 heavy laser cannons underneath the cockpit, which actually do move back and forth. You can actually represent the guns firing and the barrels rotating, which is pretty cool. Then you also have the main laser cannon power cells as well, done and built in behind there as well. So all over, very accurate looking for the weapon system for the cockpit. Now, what is clearly one of the standout design elements of the AT-AT is the viewport done in all red. It looks evil, it looks menacing. The shaping of it, I think, was done pretty perfectly too. Now, in order to access the cockpit, the main side panel just pulls out. It's only held in by two little Technic pins that slide into the chin section. So just trying to be gentle and pull that whole section off. You can see how there are these Technic pins which just fit in there into the chin joint of the AT-AT. So that comes off, and if you wanted to display the AT-AT in its cross-section form, you could also do it this way with the cockpit too and have just the one side panel piece taken off, so you could still see into the interior of the AT-AT. If you want to actually access and place minifigs inside of there, you pretty much have to lift the entire top and front section up. It's all one piece. So again, just carefully, you just lift it up and to the Technic hinges on here. It just slides backwards, and it doesn't really stay up like this. You would have to hold it if you want to access the interior, but you can leave it open, and then you have access to place general veers inside of the cockpit, and then you can place the two AT-AT drivers in their respective seats also. As far as the interior of the cockpit goes, I do really love the one main sticker that shows the AT-AT drivers looking out of the viewport. It shows the shield generator on Hoth. It's just pretty cool and a nice little Easter egg almost to pretend that the AT-AT is actually marching towards the rebels on Hoth. As for the rest of the details in the cockpit, you have some printed pieces for General Veers' command station where he's standing, looking outwards through the AT-AT, and then you have the same design for the access hatch for the access tube into the rest of the AT-AT's interior. Overall, the cockpit is pretty tight, but you can fit the minifigs inside there nicely, and the detail that they were able to cram into such a small space is certainly appreciated. All right, now in the instructions manual, it shows you how to pick up the build, and it actually recommends you pick it up by one hand, it looks like, underneath the midsection of the AT-AT. It tells you not to pick it up by the cockpit or the back or by the legs. I'm going to give it a shot here and actually pick it up just with one hand. The build is fairly heavy, so I'm kind of surprised that that's the way LEGO recommends it. Normally, I've been picking it up by two hands, kind of gingerly, anywhere in the midsection I can get a grip, and that's where I've at least found there's a huge risk of things actually falling off, especially the underside of the main kind of body of the build. But let's give it a shot just with one hand and see how it goes. I won't lie, I've saved this clip till very last in case stuff does fall off. Okay, you know what? It's heavy, like the build feels very heavy just by one hand, but maybe because of the way the weight is a bit more evenly distributed in my palm, it's not designed to swoosh around, but I mean, okay, maybe there is something to picking it up just by one hand, and maybe too, more of the weight is actually put on the kind of sides of the AT-AT, not directly the middle, which maybe it's a bit more when you pick it up by two hands. I don't know, but I'm a little bit impressed actually that the build feels as solid as it does just with one hand, but it's heavy though, like my arm is getting definitely tired. The other thing I will try and demonstrate for you guys is if you watch the hips when I place the build down, you'll notice that the build will tend to kind of just move forward a little bit at those joints just because I think of the weight on them when you set it down. So yeah, you guys would have been able to see it just leans forward a little bit more than it was originally when I picked it up. So that's something you just have to be a little bit careful of when moving the build. But hey, you know what? Credit where credit is due. My mind's changed a little bit, I think, on how the AT-AT actually was able to be picked up rather easily with one hand. Like I said, my arm, I feel my arm's tired. But hey, that kind of works, so maybe two hands is actually not the best way to pick it up like I have been doing, which has led to a lot of my frustrations with what I consider to be, you know, the build quality not quite working with me. Okay, so what do I think of the UCS AT-AT? Well, at the beginning of the main part of the review, I mentioned that there are four things I really look for when it comes to sets like this one. The design in terms of it being a display piece, the accuracy to the source material, the features of the build, and then the build's quality. And in three of those areas, the first three areas, I think this set is absolutely phenomenal. It is one of the coolest display pieces you could have for a LEGO set. It is just so menacing, it's so large, it's a build that just everyone can be impressed by and enjoy. As I mentioned, it's a set that people who aren't quite into LEGO will be able to appreciate. It's so good looking. And two, it's so accurate as well. All of the little features, all of the little design elements were done so purposefully and just with the intention of making this really the most accurate representation of an AT-AT that LEGO could make, and that came across very fully. The set also has a ton of features like the access hatches, the ability to move the cockpit side to side, the fact that the guns alternate when they fire, the full interior, you can hold all 40 snowtroopers with their own seat inside of it. That is just wild to me that LEGO actually went to that degree to make stuff like that happen. So for those three categories, this set is an absolute 10 out of 10. However, that last part, the build quality, I'm always going to be honest with you guys in my reviews. I'm never going to try and lie or hide how I truly feel about a set. In terms of the build quality, this was one of, if not the most frustrating set for me to review so far in almost a year of me making LEGO Star Wars reviews. The build quality, in my opinion, just is not there. And here's the thing. To make this review, I was moving this set around, trying to get different angles, different shots for you guys. So I was moving it a lot more than the average person would. And the average person's experience wouldn't be having to move this set around that much. You're probably going to build it, angle the legs however you want it, find a spot to put it, and then you're gonna leave it. But for me, I've been moving this thing so much and pieces just constantly have fallen off on me. The whole undercarriage has fallen off maybe 4 or 5 times during the time of me making this review, and I've had to piece it all back together and throw it up, taking me forever to do. And it's just like that with all these little pieces too, like the little side pieces to the side of the actual like hip joints. They just fall off all the time. There are just things like that with the build that I'm just not the biggest fan of in terms of its build quality. And just picking it up in general, I don't think there's really that great of a spot to pick it up from in general. If you lift it up from the middle, that whole midsection is just going to break and fall off on you if you put any pressure on it. If you lift it up by the legs, I feel like you're just putting pressure and more strain on the joints of the legs too. And even just placing it down on my table to get a different shot, I think the left forward knee joint is broken, and I actually have to take the panels off and adjust the Technic kind of gear system because it's moving now super freely. Like I can take it and just kind of move it back and forth pretty freely with my hand, and I don't want the build at the last moment here to completely fall over on me at that joint failing, but just take my word for it, it's moving a lot more freely than it should, so I think something broke maybe with putting the weight of the build just on that one leg slightly as I was setting it down. It just kind of strained and some of the parts maybe broke or got a little loose in there, so I gotta adjust that now before I put it in my display cabinet. So like I said, there are some issues with the build quality. It's been my experience with the AT-AT. It's probably, if you own the set, it probably hasn't been yours, and if you buy it, it probably won't be yours either. But just for someone who makes reviews, you really kind of put these sets through a little bit more of the paces than maybe they were designed to be. And even though the set has all these features, you know, you can take the side paneling off and everything, I've just found a lot of it to be more fragile than I think it really should be. So for the display piece, for the accuracy, and for the features, it's a 10 out of 10. For the build quality, maybe 5 or 6 out of 10. It's been very frustrating. I'm not gonna lie, guys. It hasn't been the funnest set to review just because of the fact that lots of pieces have broken on me over the course of me making the review. I've had to rebuild certain sections or adjust things multiple times. So for that reason, it's not my favorite set currently in the world, but once I put it behind my display cabinets, like I've already mentioned, have it there looking really good, it's probably going to end up being one of my favorite sets ever, and I get why the community really loves this set so much. It is truly phenomenal. Just as a reviewer, in my experience, the build quality has let me down a little bit, but that's my thoughts on the build. The minifigs I think are fantastic. Like I mentioned during that section too, you could always argue for a couple more snowtroopers, for example, but the fact that LEGO was making that snowtrooper battle pack at the same point, it's kind of meant to be an accessory purchase, I guess, to really fill up the AT-AT or create like a Hoth mock or army build the Imperials a little bit more if you wanted to, but I think 9 in total is a pretty solid number, and they're all really fantastic too. Plus, when you get the little snow speeders, little gun as well, it's all nice. It's all honestly just a really good set overall. I know I kind of ranted a little bit about the build quality, but hey, that's just how I felt about the set. Otherwise, it's a fantastic set, and if you have a chance to pick it up for close to retail and you don't own it yet, I definitely don't think you are going to be disappointed in still purchasing the set, sealed, used, whatever. It's a very worthy set to add to your LEGO Star Wars collection. Just don't move it around too much, just like I have. Thank you for watching my review on the 75313 Ultimate Collector Series AT-AT. If you made it all the way to the end of this review, and I know it was a long one, and you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel already, and you enjoyed the review, please consider subscribing, as it is truly the best way to support my LEGO Star Wars reviews. And if you want to see what this set looks like in my display cabinets, I'm going to be uploading a vlog where I kind of reorganize things a little bit and place the set actually on display with all the minifigs and everything on my second channel, OB2 Studios, where I upload vlogs and kind of behind the scenes content. So that channel will be linked in the description down below if you want to check that out and see kind of me displaying the UCS AT-AT once I get around to doing that. And as always, thank you guys again just so much for watching this review. Take care, and I will see you on the next LEGO Star Wars set review.